Well, welcome to Oldland Windmill. This is a post mill as opposed to a tower mill, the two basic sorts of mill. This post mill has been here since about 1703. It was built originally to serve the villages of Keymer and Ditchling, two villages that existed then. Hassocks, of course, didn't come until the railway in 1840, many years later. But here we've got a post mill which was used then to provide the basic food for the two local villages, flour of course, to bake their bread. We will be going inside in a moment to look at some of the details, but what you can actually see here is the entrance and the steps behind me to the right. The mill worked commercially through to 1912 when it was abandoned, but being off the beaten track, it was never stripped, it was never vandalised, it just remained here, turning into a time capsule essentially. By 1980, however, the local authority had realised it had become a dangerous structure and it either had to be pulled down or restored. And the good people of Hassocks, via the Hassocks Amenity Association, said, we'll restore it. It might take 7 years, might cost £7,000. Well, reality is very different. It's taken 35 to 40 years to actually restore and get to the state it is now. And now it is in fact fully working, fully restored, so the efforts we put in now is very much on the maintenance side. We can go inside and look at some of the details. This top floor is called the bin floor, B-I-N, because it contains 3 bins where we store the grain ready to run through the mill under gravity and feed the stones. The grain is brought up here under wind power, of course, on a sack hoist which lifts up and reaches this top floor so that the bags can then be emptied straight into the bins. This is the hopper containing the grain ready to feed into the stones. And there is the lovely traditional alarm system fitted here, the bell. There is a leather belt underneath the grain, so the weight of the grain holds the belt down, which in turn holds the bell over to the side. Should the grain run out and the hopper become empty, it allows the bell to fall across and ring, so that anyone in the vicinity, the miller outside perhaps, can hear that tinkling and very swiftly apply the brake, stop the grinding process. Because without grain running between the stones, there's the danger of the stones beginning to grind away their own surfaces. This is the end of the massive brake lever. You can see the length of it and gives us a tremendous mechanical advantage to apply the load to clamp the brake blocks around the outside of the brake wheel, running all the way around back to here. That enables us to brake the wind shaft, in other words to stop the sweeps turning should we not want them to turn, and obviously when the mill is not being used it's critical that there is a braking system to prevent it running away. This is the operating position the miller would adopt when he was running the mill. He has everything he needs within his vision and reach here. For example, the little window there enables him to see a sweep running past to judge the speed of rotation. If he wants to alter the feed rate of the grain into the stones, he has a twist peg over here. Adjusting the peg simply adjusts the angle of the feed chute to allow more grain to flow into the stones or less, as the case may be. If he wants to adjust the fineness of the flour, he will be testing it in his hand here as it runs out to test the fineness. If he wants to change the gap between the stones, he will do it on what's called the tentering gear, whereby adjusting that beam will lift and lower the top stone, so the gap can be increased or decreased between the two stones. So there he has control of the speed, the feed rate and the gap in the stones. This is where he'll be standing. Here we have the top of the main post. As far as we're aware, this is the original post. There's no evidence it was ever changed. So this was installed in the early 1700s, therefore probably started growing in 1550, that sort of order. One solid oak tree, Sussex oak. Down here we have the graffiti which has evolved over the years with the something like 13 or 14 tenant millers that have been operating the mill. The oldest one inscribed here is Joseph Winchester, October 1839. But there are many others, and with the increase in interest in genealogy, more and more people are coming back to the mill to hunt out their family names. Here we have what's called a dresser, which is a device for further screening the flour. Once it's been ground, it is fed into this machine, and this machine has inside a series of brushes which rotate relatively fast at something like 25 times the speed the stones are going around. So it's a fast rotational speed, throwing the fine flour out to the side, leaving any impurities, lumps inside, which flows down the slope. The finer flour coming out up here, the coarser flour here, and any further rubbish comes out at the end. And there are 3 sacks on the floor below to contain what comes out of this particular machine. We're now in the roundhouse, which is the building supporting the rest of the mill, and here we can see the main structure supporting the post. This is the one fixed post, and this trestle arrangement is typical of most post mills in this country. Notice the post comes down, but it does not touch the ground. It is supported by means of these quarter bars, as they're called, these great massive timbers coming out, which are recessed into the upper part of the post, which of course is approximately the midpoint of the post. The rest of the post is up inside the body of the mill. When you get to the bottom here, the post position is actually located by a series of wedges. And by adjusting these wedges, we can move the bottom of the post, which is pivoted about the top there, so that the angle can be changed, so that, for example, if the roundhouse sinks over the years, the ground sinks perhaps, the post would tilt. So to get it back vertically, we simply have to move the bottom by means of adjusting those wedges. So simply bear in mind, there are wedges that have been there for over 300 years. We can still use them to adjust the verticality of the main post.